Megatron, not the Decepticon, but the receiver who transformed the NFL. Jaw-dropping catches, desperate secondaries, and footballs disappearing into those huge hands. If you had the pleasure of seeing him play, you knew he was him. In a league full of talent, he stood head and shoulders above the rest. So what made him that good? To get the full picture, we need to rewind to his early days, back in high school. Growing up in Georgia, Calvin was already turning heads. At 6'6", he was a tall force of nature. Throw in speed, strength, and insane athleticism, and he became every high school coach's dream and every defender's nightmare. Colleges were lining up to recruit him, and Calvin chose his hometown school, Georgia Tech, where he wasted no time proving he was on another level. By his sophomore year, everyone knew the ball was coming his way, but there wasn't much defenses could do about it. By the time the 2007 NFL Draft rolled around, Calvin was the can't-miss prospect everyone wanted. After the Raiders, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, took Jamarcus Russell, the Lions took Johnson with the second pick. Little did they know that they had just picked a player who would change their franchise forever. The Raiders, not so much. Calvin Johnson was the help Detroit desperately needed. The Lions weren't exactly known for their winning ways, so when Calvin showed up, expectations were sky high. This athletic freak of nature was the team's new beacon of hope, if only the Lions could just get out of their own way. From the start, Calvin gave fans a glimpse of the superstar he'd become. In his rookie year, he racked up 756 yards and scored 5 touchdowns, 4 through the air, and even 1 rushing. It didn't take long for Calvin to make his mark. In Week 1, he snagged his first NFL touchdown, a 16-yard catch in the Lions' 36-21 win over the Raiders. He made Oakland's defense look like they were stuck in a Detroit snowstorm while playing in California. The Lions finished 7-9, which wasn't playoff material, but Calvin, he was just getting warmed up. Even in a rough season, you could see this guy was destined for greatness. Calvin Johnson's journey wasn't all highlight reels. It came with challenges. One of the biggest, playing for the Detroit Lions during some of their toughest years. In just his second season, Calvin endured the infamous 2008 campaign, where the Lions became the first NFL team to go 0-16. Yet even in that mess, Calvin was unstoppable, putting up 1,331 receiving yards and leading the league with 12 touchdowns. If anything, it proved that no matter how bad things got, Calvin was going to do Megatron things. Another hurdle? The constant quarterback shuffle in Detroit. Over the years, Calvin caught passes from at least 9 different quarterbacks. But no matter who was throwing the ball, Johnson delivered. Then in 2011, with Matthew Stafford finally healthy for a full season, Calvin really took off. He posted 1,681 yards and 16 touchdowns, leading the Lions to their first playoff appearance since 1999. And then came 2012, the season. Calvin shattered Jerry Rice's single-season receiving yards record, finishing with 1,964 yards. That record still stands today. Defenses tried everything. Double teams, triple teams. But it didn't matter. Calvin was on another level, securing his place as one of the greatest receivers of all time. Look, we can't all be 6'6" with a 40-inch vertical, but you can flex your skills by subscribing. Drop a like, and let us know which Megatron moment left you shaking your head. Unless you're a defender who faced him, then sorry about that? Calvin Johnson's career was full of Megatron moments, but one game stands out above the rest: his legendary performance against the Dallas Cowboys in 2013. Calvin put up an unbelievable 329 receiving yards, just 7 yards shy of the NFL's single-game record. The Cowboys' defense was left shaking their heads as Calvin caught 14 passes. It was a performance that solidified his status as Megatron and proved he was nearly impossible to cover. Another defining moment came in 2010 against the Chicago Bears, when Calvin made what looked like a game-winning touchdown catch, only for it to be overturned by the now infamous Calvin Johnson rule. Apparently, making a spectacular grab wasn't enough. You had to fill out paperwork to prove it was a catch. It took the NFL 7 years to finally change that rule. Even when he played by the rules, the game struggled to keep up with him. What's even more impressive, Calvin played through countless injuries, bad knees, sprained ankles, broken fingers, but this Decepticon kept suiting up and making plays. Meanwhile, the Lions, well, they just kept on losing. But if nothing else, Detroit fans could always count on Calvin, giving them a glimmer of hope every Sunday. Calvin Johnson did indeed retire in 2016 at just 30 years of age, which surprised many fans, as he was still playing at an elite level. In his final season, he recorded 88 catches for 1,214 yards and 9 touchdowns. However, the decision to retire was largely due to the toll that constant injuries had taken on his body. Calvin cited issues with ankles, knees, and even a finger that was bone on bone, which made it difficult to continue playing at his usual high standard. In typical Calvin fashion, his retirement wasn't accompanied by any big fanfare or farewell tour. He simply said goodbye and quietly stepped away from the game, showing the same humility that defined much of his career. His impact, though, was anything but quiet. Calvin wrapped up his career with over 11,000 receiving yards, 83 touchdowns, and multiple NFL records. He set a new standard for what a wide receiver could be, with his unmatched combination of size, speed, and power. And of course, his single-season receiving yards record of 1,964 yards from 2012 remains unbroken today, proof of just how dominant he was at his peak. In 2021, Calvin Johnson secured his place in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, becoming a first-ballot inductee. Even though his career was relatively short, it was clear he belonged among the NFL's greatest players. Calvin redefined what it meant to be a top receiver. Calvin Johnson dominated in a way few could. From breaking records to making catches that seemed impossible, Megatron's legacy is cemented in NFL history. But how good was he really? That's up to you. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and tell us where you rank Megatron among the greatest wide receivers to ever step on the field.